admired leaders drive both performance and followership, and admired leaders really want to get excellent at leadership. They really desire that.
Hey, it's Nikki Llewellyn Gregory, and you're on Gut Plus Science. You're in for a fast-paced, storytelling, action item-rich leadership growth experience. I hope you make this podcast a habit. I consider it a leadership mentoring tool. Learning together makes us better together, and that is how we change the world around us. Let's get to it.
Hey, it's Nikki, and today's conversation gets right to the heart of leadership. It's not a title. It's not the next bonus or, pay scale increase. It's not a personality type, but it's a choice that you and I, all of us as leaders, get to make every day. And it's a very special choice and a very important role. And my guest, Wesley Bender, has spent years developing leaders across industries. And what stands out about his work is a simple belief. He believes leadership lives in behaviors, not labels. Wes brings a refreshing challenge to the norms out there. And while many rely on assessments or frameworks to explain leadership, he focuses on something far more practical and meaningful: self-efficacy. It's the belief that you can influence outcomes through your actions. Model the way, like I like to say it. And when leaders build that muscle, everything changes: confidence, performance, and the way others experience them. And so in our conversation today, we're going to dig into what leadership really is. Let's challenge all of us, challenge those norms. What separates an admired leader from an average leader, and why the behavioral approach is often the missing link in leadership development today. So, all right, well, stop talking with all that intro. Let's get to it. So, Wes, you've been around leadership, like I said, for many, many years. What drew you to work in this space every day?
Yeah, great question. First off, I need you to introduce me for everything. I always do from now on. That's fantastic. So my background is really my core passion is youth and adolescent development. And so I grew up working actually for the YMCA. I was the director of youth and international initiatives for all the YMCA's in Atlanta, Georgia. So we would partner with schools and other extracurricular activities. And what we learned was if we could really drive self-efficacy, like I know we'll talk about in a minute. And when we talk about self-efficacy, it's the ability that a person makes to lead self and lead others. And so we really hung our hat around helping youth along with their families to choose leadership in every circumstance, every situation. That's what started me on this kind of journey that has been leadership development for now many, many years.
I love it. I want to kind of level set here with some defining or kind of setting a stage around leadership. We all have our different ways of believing it. There's so many different versions. I know you're here. We're challenging the norms today, right? So really thinking deeper. When you say leadership is a choice, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think when you ask folks, you could go into an organization and you could say, who are your leaders, and you're going to get typically three different buckets of people. You're either going to get people who just express who the C-level folks are, who the board members are. You're going to get the titles that are there. You may start getting some folks who don't look exactly at titles, but they are talking about who's driving the most results in the organization. Or you're going to get a third bucket of folks, and you're going to get, and this is a smaller bucket most of the time, but you're going to get people who talk about other leaders within the organization because they're just a lot of fun to be around. They're almost what we call, culture carriers in a way. And I think it's important to note that every person that shows up in any circumstance has the opportunity to say, I choose leadership in this situation. Because leadership spans across every demographic, every industry, every psychographic. It spans across our personal relationships, just like our professional relationships. And I think if anybody, listening to this right now, if you really think about it, what has made the most influence on any place you've worked, any place you've been, any place you've been with your family, at the end of the day, it's somebody showed up with a high level of leadership. I joke sometimes I I took 5 years of German in high school as a foreign language. I only needed 2 years of German in high school. And foreign language was my least favorite subject. I didn't like school in general, but I really disliked foreign language. But I took 5 years. Well, what was the reason for that? Right? Some people say, well, there was some girl in the class that you really liked or something like that. But it wasn't that. It was the teacher, the leader, the facilitator in the room, the person who brought an unbelievable culture into that classroom. I just wanted to be around that. And so I ended up learning a foreign language, not because I liked the foreign language or I needed it or anything like that. I learned it because somebody chose to be a leader in the room. And she didn't just manage the classroom. She led group discussion. She led what's in the room. And so when we say leadership is a choice, not a position, what that allows us to do is everybody has opportunity to show up in that way. And again, what we'll get into, learn those best practices and those behaviors that really allow you to make people in situations better, whether it's at the dinner table or the boardroom at the end of the day.
I have a important calling message that I like to share. And I feel like this is a good time because it's in this defining, and I feel like you will resonate. And I want to see where it hits for you is the day you say yes to that leadership position, whether that was, let's call it like feeder principal or whatever, where, you've been there and then, you get asked to do this because you've been here and it's a tenure thing, whether it's that or you sought out the position, however you got there, whatever. And it could be a volunteer leadership position, whatever. The day that you said yes to that leadership position, it came with immense responsibility because you have an incredible ripple effect impact on so many lives in that leadership position. And how many times, unfortunately, I do feel like I live in a bubble, so I don't hear it as much as others, but unfortunately, a lot of leadership experiences cause severe trauma to people. It really is something that then ripple effects on their house and to their dinner tables and their ability to have energy to go do other things in their community. It can really take people out, right? And so I want to in with that, and I want to hear what you have to say around when we say yes to that leadership opportunity, that position. This is a deep responsibility. What's your take on that?
I have lots of thoughts around that, and I think you're exactly right. I think there is leadership that has extreme negative effect. Again, and when I talk about leadership, it's really important to me that we're talking about both from a personal and professional level. There is negative leadership within homes. There is negative leadership within organizations. There's negative leadership within social groups and friend groups and all those kind of things. And so again, the choice of whether or not I choose leadership, because people won't typically choose negative behaviors when they know there's an influence attached to it. So just the very fact that I start thinking I have the opportunity to influence, right? Some people say leadership is influence. Leadership is influence, which is communication. Communication, influence, leadership, all are really intertwined in a lot of ways there. So I think about that. And then I think about there's a lot of self-awareness that goes into that too, the ability to understand what's on the receiving end of me in any particular circumstance. And the more I understand that, the more I can manage myself accordingly. But then at the end of the day, leadership is what you do when you show up. So the last thing that really came to mind is the leaders who say one thing, but their actions and their behaviors and the best practices and the routines and habits that they show are very different from that. And so leadership at the end of the day, we think sometimes is what we know or the latest book we've read or the latest conference we've gone to, and it's what we say. And sometimes we'll even think it's how we think. But leadership shows up. Leadership is what you do, what you actually choose to do when you show up to a certain circumstance. And so just the very idea that I embrace that I say that I will agree with leadership is a choice, not a position, immediately forces a lot of us in our very human nature to embrace some of the behaviors that help that positive influence on others. So I think there are leaders who are promoted to a position, and because they've never really seen leadership as a choice, they've never really seen leadership as what they do, but their performance and their ability to drive great results escalates them to a title. Therefore, they are seen as a leader because of the title, but they don't actually have the behaviors of true leadership along the way. I think that's where we really find that disconnect, and sometimes it can be a negative influence from a leader.
Which ties right into kind of the last area that I was planning to do some defining or set some, I don't know, groundwork, if you will. Self-efficacy. It's so much of what you were just saying about the doing, the actual actions, not the, you know, here's what we say we are as a company and what our leadership is like, but what is it actually, right? So I want to learn from you a lot in this. I know that this is your North Star. This is the focus for leadership that you think is, highly important to keep our eye on. Could you share some examples of what, I don't know how you want to do this, but here's an idea. Share some examples of a leader maybe you admire and what they do, like these examples of what they do, so that we're getting a better understanding of a leader that practices self-efficacy.
Let me define out self-efficacy in a very simple way. And you're right. That was the core construct that we were working on when I was working in the youth development space. And basically, what that says is the ability an individual has to vision cast themselves in the future. So paint a clear, concise, compelling, courageous vision or picture of what their future looks like, and it be so compelling that it stirs in them real, genuine, intrinsic motivation to do something different, just to start, stop, reduce, do more of something, some kind of behavior, something I do in the present. And there's lots of constructs that happen up under self-efficacy. So, for instance, time preference. How far in the future do we look when we're making a decision in the present? There was a piece of research that came out that said the typical adolescent today looks 2 hours into the future. That's as far as they look when they're making a decision in the present. What does that mean? They're actually making decisions based on mood and emotion, right? Instead of any kind of proactivity of who I want to be, who I'm trying to become, and all those kind of things. So what they end up doing has negative consequences based on that time preference. So self-efficacy, without going into too much detail there, self-efficacy embraces all of those constructs that said, how far in the future can I paint this very compelling thing? And then what can I actually do about it in the present? Right. So that idea, if you can move the needle on self-efficacy just a little bit in people, they make drastically different choices as far as how they show up, how they behave, what kinds of things they're interested in, what they want to learn, and grow in, and all those kind of things. So, and you asked about a leader that maybe embraced this. I'm reminded of a guy who was a group vice president at the YMCA in Atlanta. And this individual could raise money like nobody's business, which is a big thing within the YMCA. So his results were incredible, high membership numbers. His numbers were crazy. But at the same time, this individual, if you asked anybody, they would use this word, and if you said, who's a leader in your organization, they would say, who I really admire? I admire Dan Pyle. And they admired Dan Pyle because Dan was knocking results out of the park. But when they were around Dan Pyle, there was an energy that came alive inside of them. So what Dan had the ability to do is cast a vision, not only for himself of where he wanted to be, so his self-efficacy, he would have organizational efficacy, team efficacy, right? And what he would do was cast this vision out in the future, and he would not only stir intrinsic motivation in himself, he would stir intrinsic motivation in others too. So what's the byproduct of that? He did not manage people based on rewards and consequences and pay scales and all those kind of things. He led people, and he led people to understand that there's this small echelon of leader that drives both performance and followership. And when you're doing that, it creates this unbelievable team dynamics. So Dan comes to mind because he had that ability. to cast that vision for people and create not only self-efficacy, but efficacy across the teams that he was leading.
Well, I don't know if you know that you teed me up extremely well for the next thing I was going to say, because I wanted to transition into the admired leader. And I know that's a phrase that is very central to you in how you look at leadership. It's also the name of the company that you spend your waking hours providing meaningful work and impact, admired leadership. And so I don't know if you noticed, or maybe did this totally on brand. You said, "So let me tell you about Dan Pyle. People admire Dan." And I was like, "Oh, great. Yeah, right." So how does this all fit in the admired leader? We're talking about self-efficacy. Naturally, you use the word admire. I wouldn't say that I hear that in every conversation on this show. Where does that come together?
Yeah. Well, let me articulate, if you don't mind, let me articulate how I stumbled upon admired leadership in my own leadership journey. And a lot of the things that I can talk about are due to the firm that I work for, Admired Leadership, which has been unbelievably meaningful to me, both in my professional and personal life. So, and I'll go back to my years, running these programs for youth development. We were constantly looking for leadership content that would drive self-efficacy, all those kind of things that we really wanted to hang our hat on. What became true is we would find great principle-based leadership content, or we would find great what we would call psychometric content. So, and I know we may get into that a little bit deeper, but we'd find these things that were really good, and they were inspirational, and they were informative, and they were great learning. But at the end of the day, it was still up to the volunteer or the team director or the youth leader to actually take that and then bring utility to it, really make it practical, really make it actionable to whatever program circumstance that we're running in that. And that was always really frustrating to me, because it was like we got this great content, but we're still having to do all the work to make it actionable at the end of the day. So that's when I literally stumbled upon admired leadership. And the way the firm operates is, we don't typically talk a lot about our firm or our coaches or anything that we do, because we really want to lift our clients up. So when I stumbled upon it, I was like, where has this been, all my life? Because the utility of it was incredible. And so basically it's, the firm is been coaching executive level leaders for 40 years. And when they go in and do 360s and have conversations with some of these leaders, they would hear things like, they're great, they knock results out of the park, or they're great, I really love to be around them. But there was always something after that. So if they said they're great, they drive performance, but they are a bear to be around, right? Or their results are fantastic, but they are leaving a sea of high tension relationships in their wake as they're doing this. Or they'd say, those people are so much fun to be around if they could just hit the marks on some of these performance indicators, right? And so people typically lean one way or the other, and they're often promoted because of one of those two things. And then every once in a while, you would hear that term, you know who I really admire? Or you'd ask about a person, they'd say, I admire them so much. And again, the reason was results and followership, that they're incredible. I want to be around them, and they're helping me reach a new level, reach a new potential, all those kind of things. And so admired leadership says, I'm not going to rely on one side or the other. I'm going to truly better myself and desire to get better as a leader. So I show up differently, and truly every situation I walk into, whether it's the PTA at the school, or it's the Friday night, gathering of all the friends, or it's the team meeting on Monday morning, or it's the crisis situation at our organization. When I walk into the room, people recognize this situation, this circumstance is about to get better, right? They've got a, as the kids are saying it these days, they got an aura about them, right? When they walk in the room. And so when we say admired leadership, a principle-based approach, I used this analogy the other day. A principle-based approach. My son's plays tennis, and we got him a coach, and that coach came in and said, "Jackson, you need to hit the ball harder." And Jackson was like, "Great," and he tried to hit the ball harder, and he wasn't really getting better. So we pivoted. We got him another coach. This coach came in and said, "Jackson, you need to hit the ball harder." And he started going out. He said, "Well, wait, 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 wait." He said, "Let me show you how. Move your hand just a little bit and tweak your elbow in just a hair when you go to hit the ball." And he's immediately hitting it harder, right? We're not working on those larger principles or how you happen to be different than this other player over here. We want to look at exactly what you do, how you're showing up right now, and we want to make those small tweaks and those small adjustments a little bit different in how you word what you're wording there, those small little incremental adjustments that have huge effect, whether that be on the followership side or the performance side. So kind of two aspects, a long-winded answer of two aspects, which is admired leaders drive both performance and followership, and admired leaders really want to get excellent at leadership. They really desire that in a way.
Man, so good. And, it clicked for me when you said you're hearing someone and how they're talking about this leader, and they say, who I really admire? It's those um, unprompted asks that naturally come up when you have those leaders in your life. Like, it's just so important to you to share how much they matter, right? Which, gosh, wouldn't the world be an amazing place if everybody was an admired leader? Because just you're inspired. You feel better about yourself. Every leader that I have in my life that I would call an admired leader, I'm like, we're like family. Like, they didn't leave my life. Like, some of them might not be coaching with me anymore, or maybe I don't work with them, but we still have a very solid relationship. And I think the opposite is so true. When you don't have that, it's like I think of those leaders and I have no idea what they're doing today, right? So, yeah, just this is so good. Okay. So, moving on because this is going so fast. This area of like the behavioral approach versus psychometrics. So you said, "Hey, I think we're going to come back to the psychometrics." I love a good assessment. Like, I'm an assessment junkie. I'm like, let me tell you about the disc and the Myers-Briggs and my Enneagram and what about strengths, right? So, but also I want to hear this kind of other side where you've challenged the use or maybe heavy use, I don't know, but you have a way of thinking about this in a little bit of a different way. These psychometric tools. Can you tell us your thoughts?
Sure. And are you a 7 on the Enneagram, Nikki? Where what are you?
Three.
A 3. Okay. All right. Do you have any wing that's a 7 or anything? You're
You know what? I didn't have a wing on my initial. I've only done that once, so sometimes you take it and then it like sharpens a little bit, but it'll probably always be a 3, might give a wing. But you know what we should probably do in a little bonus round when we stop recording is like, let me guess your so and so, right? Because I love these so much.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
So people love these psychometrics, right? These personality assessments, and for good reason, right? And it's amazing how good they are at pegging you, right? People type in their information, answer all the questions, and they get this piece back, whether it's a number or a color or a system of numbers and letters or whatever it is, and they get this back. So, wow, this thing knows me so well. Well, of course it does. You just told it all about yourself, right? And it's designed to do that. And then I don't want people to hear what I'm not saying, which we're not saying there is no place for psychometrics. Psychometrics, personality assessments, strengths finders, Hogan assessments, working genius, right, which is really, really good with Lencioni. All of these things are phenomenal tools that really tend to raise self-awareness in both the category of being more aware of me and being others aware too. And then you get into something like working genius, and there's some real tangible things there in regards to, okay, how do these two personalities work together? Do they work together, right? There is some danger in that though. And the danger that we find is a lot of people will say, well, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, to use that as an example. So Excel spreadsheets aren't really my thing. right? Or they'll say, I'm a blue, and so I'm just sensitive to things. So you need to adjust with that. Or I'm a whatever on the Myers-Briggs, and I'm just directive. That's just the way I am, right? And so what happens is people end up hiding behind this psychometric, and it becomes a reason for them not to get better. So kind of put that on the side. Now, if there is some kind of complementary utility or practical wisdom, advice, or something that goes alongside those types of programs, then it can be healthy. We work from a behavioral lens. And when we say an admired leadership behavior, I think it'd probably be important to kind of classify what that is. An admired leadership behavior is something we've seen that drives performance followership, like we've been talking about. We have seen that behavior show up universally, which means if I use that behavior with a 7 or a 3 or a blue or a green, it resonates across the board. It resonates in every psychographic, resonates in every demographic, resonates in every industry, resonates in parenting, just like it does in the C-level suite, in that team leader meeting, shows up across the board, which means if I explain this behavior to you, which probably will take less than 5 minutes, and we've seen it show up universally across the board, and you can put your hands around it and you can begin to practice that right now, right? And what that means is it's just like how we approach leadership, just like I explained, with my son. I can immediately tweak my hands and put my elbow in and start practicing, right? Whereas the other approaches often lack that kind of immediate utility that you can have. And so we find leaders get better faster by playing in the behavioral sandbox of leadership rather than the principle based approach, which can be leaders need to build better trust. Leaders need to build better relationships. Leaders should give better feedback. Leaders should hold others accountable. Leaders need to elevate performance. Leaders need to inspire and motivate people. And if you have somebody on the stage talking about this thing, people are yes, 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 yes. And then they leave and they're like, how do I actually do that? So that's that principle-based approach. And the psychometric approach, again, how is everybody different? Which people love. People love to know they're unique, which people are. But at the same time, there are universal principles of leadership that we can talk about and you can implement and you can go do right now. And so that behavioral based kind of sandbox of leadership is so much more fun, at least for those people who truly want to get better and they truly want to show up differently at the end of the day. Now, the dynamite piece is learning about yourself, learning what principles, and then complementing that with how do I actually do that, right? So don't hear what we're not saying. There's great books, principle-based behaviors. There's our principle-based approach, great assessment tools out there, which we all love. But if you're not backing it up with something that's practical or going into something that's actionable, very few leaders actually get better from that work at the end of the day.
That's so good. I didn't know which way you were going with the psychometric feedback there. And I was like, I hope we're still friends because I really like a good psychometric. I am with you on your take. I'm so with you on your take that, psychometrics are so helpful for self-awareness and for, team mate awareness for understanding each other, right? And self-awareness is the word, the root there. However, I have shared many times, and I think this is what you were getting at, is when we use it as a crutch, it's our excuse. It is our limiting factor. I 100% agree with you. That, and that's come up many times and it's like almost in this victim mentality category where, but that's just who I am and it's excuses and all of that. So can't agree more that, there's both sides of it. The self-awareness that comes from those tools, right?
So yeah, both as a crutch to get better individually, but at the same time, can be a crutch for us actually working with others too, right? That's that self-awareness piece. Daniel Goleman literally wrote the book, right, on emotional intelligence, self-awareness, managing of self, others awareness, being able to manage and be around and work in teams with others. That is the epitome of emotional intelligence. And so, well, my wife is a good example of this. If she has a disagreement with somebody, she'll say, "Oh, I bet they're a 2 on the Enneagram," because that's her opposite, right, of her Enneagram number. And so she'll just not. She'll be like, "Oh, are you a 2? Okay, obviously we're not going to get along, so it is what it is." When we would say, there's some behaviors here that you can implement and do. There's some habits that you can form. You can explore your range with your whatever personality you have. You can explore your range with whatever style that you have so that you can work in collaboration with this individual you did not get along with, last week. And the learning that will take place from that will make you better and will make them better at the end of the day. And again, that's the space we want to play in that make people better.
That was so good. Okay, this is going by so fast, but I want to do just a quick understanding of when we say the behavioral approach, you're really shining a light on this way of thinking about leadership betterment. And I thought, what if we could maybe give an example? Maybe you have a current client right now that's just thriving in, the newness of working with you all and applying this behavioral approach. What does that look like? What are some of the components of how you do it this way versus not that we're saying either or. We're not saying that, but I'm just giving an example of I have a friend, she's an amazing disc trainer or whatever, right? So she does assessments, then she does one-on-one debriefs, and then she does a team, I think it's two team sessions, and they like chart out this whiteboard session, and you have this picture, you see it all, and you have these conversations, and that's kind of like the process of what it looks like in her psychometric work. Okay, bring this to life in the work that you do at admired leadership, what it looks like for a leader to work with you all.
Yeah, great question. I'll try to give a good, broad example and try to give some specificity to what this looks and feels like on the receiving end. We do a lot of one-on-one executive coaching with senior level leaders. That's kind of the bread and butter. We do some team coaching within that. We actually have an AI executive coach that's pretty powerful too, called Alex. So that's what we do. What that looks like or how that looks is we want to know exactly what is top of mind to you right now. So one of the questions you will never hear us ask, and we will steer away from if it goes down that path, is what happened and how does that make you feel? Right now, I'm a huge proponent of therapy and been in therapy myself, and phenomenal. Leadership coaching is not therapy. It's what do I do to drive this team forward? How do I become a better leader? So sometimes it's easy to kind of classify what we do by saying what it's not first. But we're not interested in how this makes you feel. We're interested in the universal leadership behaviors that are going to drive performance and stir more motivation and energy in the people that you lead and the people that are around you. So that's kind of an initial 10,000 foot view of it. What does that actually look like? I think of a client recently of a Fortune 500 firm globally, and the individual was real high up, senior level leader within their accounting kind of financial services, and he grew up through the organization, knows everything there is to know about accounting, right? And he led a team of folks, and he was the go-to guy when it came to any questions they had around accounting and those kind of things. Well, he rose up, people loved to work around him and those kind of things. And so they had a position come open where they needed some leadership in their IT cybersecurity space, right? And the team was really floundering there. So they moved this, they asked this individual, would you move over and lead this other team? And he said, sure. So he moved over into the other team, and it began to be a bit of a disaster because he went in thinking his job was to become the expert in all of the things, all the skills, all the different nuances of what that department was trying to accomplish and trying to do. And so there was a coaching opportunity there, and it was a leadership coaching opportunity. And that's when we came in, and that individual would share, here's what I got going on. It's not going well and everything. And based on behaviors and good practices and best practices of the world's most admired leaders, we said, well, I don't know that your job is to know best what your staff, what your team is doing. Your job is to understand their barriers that they need. Your job is to ask them what's in their way, because that's what you as the leader can help them with on each and every day. And it was a completely different reframe. And then we gave him questions. These are the types of questions that you would ask to learn more about what that is. Well, that all of a sudden drew that team closer and closer and closer to him because of that type of a relationship. So we look at little behaviors, right, that we can do that make a huge difference. What we're doing is picking up on the exact circumstance that you're finding yourself in. Where are the tension points that you're finding there? And then let's try this, like right now, right? Let's not go through the 6-step, leadership principle or curriculum or whatever. Tell me what's going on, and let's try this. Let me advise you on what we know will probably work in this particular situation. And so, as far as what it looks and feels like, it's showing up, giving circumstance, and then basically having something, oh, I can't wait to try this with my team and see how it goes, right? That's leadership coaching at its best. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So good. And sometimes you're doing things and you look at the clock and you're like, oh, wow. What is it they say? Time flies when you're having fun. Well, I had a whole lot of other things to just, ask and share as examples and collaborate. So maybe we need to come back soon. But I think for now, this has been so helpful, eye opening, rich with stories and examples. And I think, our main focus here is to understand that leadership is a choice and that leadership is not just in the workplace. It is in the home. It is out in the gym. It's all in the places. We all get to be a leader. It's not just by title, and modeling the way, like that self-efficacy. It is us living it out, not just the talking, but the actual doing. And it's not easy. This is a lot to learn, and to be able to apply. And you just kind of keep learning your toolbox to do that. And it's an ongoing thing. We never arrive, right? But I think this whole understanding of the behavioral approach is really important to understand. Man, why didn't that psychometric assessment that I love in my company that we did, what was that, a year ago? Yeah, I think so. Do we ever talk about that anymore? I mean, like why, yes, it was awareness, but then what is the actions that we're taking to really develop and level up so much of what you're talking about. So anyways, you're gonna have to come back soon, but we got to head on over to our lightning round, which is our fun round. Before we do that, you have so many resources. Like, you have what, 4 or 5 podcasts, you've got events, you've got all of these tools and downloadable workbooks, and people can find that at admiredleadership.com. That's the hub, right?
That's exactly right. admiredleadership.com would be the place to go. Field notes, click on field notes. When you get to that website, we have 100,000 readers of our daily field notes that go out, just really practical pieces of leadership wisdom that come out every single day. And then within those field notes, you get all kinds of things show up in the footers of those and all kinds of stuff. So that's the best way. Just go to the website and explore.
Awesome. Go look it up, or you can check the show notes. There'll be a link there that you can click on. And I'm still learning more about admired leadership. I'm like, where have I been? You've been around for 40 years and I just met you all in the past year, but I'm so glad I have, and so much more to learn, and really enjoy collaborating with you, Wes. Now it's time to go to our lightning round. This is just fun and quick, gives us an opportunity to get to know you just beyond, what we talked about today, getting to know Wes, and kind of some fun little, definitely fun. I got a fun one here. But the first thing we ask every episode is your favorite book of all time or favorite recent read. We add it to an ongoing recommended reading list. What is that book that you'd like to share?
Yeah, the one that comes to mind, which is actually not a favorite of our firm necessarily, but it was very meaningful to me at a certain time, was The Art of Self-Deception. and the name of the author escapes me right now, but The Art of Self-Deception. It really outlines sometimes the kind of box we put ourselves in, and we're not quite aware of how we can get better. And it was really helpful, especially when you're working with people who are in that box and you're trying so desperately. And at times you just need to let them be, let them be.
That's good. Thank you for that. I have not read that, but I just wrote it down and it will be on our list. So I said we're going to get to know Wes here, right? So I heard you wore wet bathing suits to high school. Is this like a thing in your city or like what is the deal?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, long story short, I grew up high school, I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and big wakeboarder growing up. And my dad and I would trailer the boat out to the lake, to the boat dock and put it in. And I would wakeboard at 5 o'clock in the morning and wakeboard up until school started. He would drop me off, trailer in the boat, so I would hop out of the truck and go to school. He would then drive downtown to work, and when I got off of school, I'd go home, pick up the trailer, take it back to the boat, and whenever he got off of work, he'd come out and join me on the lake. And there's just some really rich memories there. But yes, I showed up in a wet bathing suit a lot growing up.
That's great. That's great. I grew up with my family on lakes. That was our jam. And now my husband and I have continued on with we're now the boat people to bring the family in. And there's just something about lakes, whatever sport you like on there. It just really is great for family and friends and all that. So love it. But I never did wear a wet bathing suit to school. You got me on that one. Winter Park, Colorado. So I have never been there, but I hear it's your favorite travel destination. And I did just pull up pictures just so I could follow along when you're telling us about it. I'm like looking at it right now. It looks amazing. What makes Winter Park, Colorado your like favorite place to travel to?
Just great memories again. Grew up wakeboarding, but also a big snowboarder too. And there's just nothing like coming down a mountain of fresh snow, and that's both thought provoking. It also, it's exercise at the same time. It's gorgeous. It's just truly inspirational in all the right ways. And similar spring break, my dad and my brother and my brother-in-law at that time would load up in the truck, pile in the truck. My dad would buy a honey baked ham, and we'd eat on that honey baked ham all week long. And we'd drive out to Winter Park from Knoxville, Tennessee. It's about a 22-hour drive. And all week long, we'd just eat on that ham. It was low budget. We didn't have a ton of money. But it's just really, really good memories, good times with family.
That's awesome. It looks so beautiful there. And I don't know, I'm not a snow skier or snowboarder, but I see so many like tracks. There's like all these places. It's more than I've ever seen. I don't know much
Yeah.
about that, but if somebody out there likes winter sports, it looks like the place. Really cool. So it's so important as leaders, particularly in the world today, that I feel like that's a little overused, but there's a lot going on. Just, and we're constantly connected. And leadership's hard and it's a lot, and family and just the world. Where do you go in the world that takes you away from everything? And how do you do that?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the healthiest in the entire world, but it's very important to me. And if you asked anybody in my family or anybody who knows me well, that they would know that this is the place, but it's the movie theater for me. So I feel like my mind is racing, and a lot of leaders who are listening to this probably find themselves in the same boat, that it's hard to slow your mind down with everything you want to do, everything you're excited about, all the teams, all the different things that you're navigating. And so the movie theater has always been a place where I really allow my mind to just go to mush for a little bit. And so I was telling you, Nikki, I go to 2 or 3 movies a week at times. There's times when I put all my kids to bed, and then I head off to the movies by myself in the evening. And it's just a good place to let my mind slow down, reset a little bit. So yeah, the movie theater and a tub of popcorn for sure. I love me some good popcorn.
That's so great. Well, I know if I ever need the DL on a movie, like, is this one I should watch or not? Like, now I have a contact. I never have had one before that I'm like, he's gonna cover all the bases probably on movies. So that is amazing. And then I think just your reminder that it's so important to have the things, particularly for ourselves, not that, there's things that you do to recharge that are with your family and your friends, but things that you do for yourself that just get you away and just recharge. And whatever that is, you figure out yours and do more of that. It's been so good today, Wes. Thank you for joining. Thank you for just so much knowledge you shared and then all the resources that you're providing to our listeners. If someone wanted to connect with you directly in follow up for a question or to just build a new friendship, what's the best way?
Yeah. Reach out over email for sure. Wbender at cra-admiredleadership.com. And I talk to people all over the world all day long and would love to chat with anybody and everybody, and happy to chat leadership or whatever else. If you're a snowboarder out there or you also love movies, I'd be happy to chat about that too.
We just left the world a little bit better. Now, go do something with it.